So some things are going to change around this channel. Probably quite a few things. I'm still going to cover news, but I think I'm going to start covering a lot of other things as well. And a lot of those are ideas that underlie whatever it is that I'm talking about while we're talking about news. I think it's important to start with what communism is. I know, Don hates communism. Shocking. But communism gets looked at like, well, it's a good idea, or any of these other platitudinous, nonsensical things that just get said anytime it gets brought up. But what communism actually is, in practice, is materialism as moral absolutism. Well, that sounds like word salad, so what do I mean? Communism ignores the idea that there is anything to life other than material equality. The presumption of all communists is that everything will just take care of itself as long as there is material equality, as long as everyone has whatever they need. All the answers from communists become things like, well, haven't you ever met anyone who really just loved their work? Oh, sure, I've met those people. Is there some reason to believe that that will be a universal truth? No. It's just taken for granted. It just must be. Because the only problems are material problems, and everything else will sort itself out. Therein lies the moral absolutism. This is the cure to all ills. It doesn't matter whether or not someone has a strong work ethic as long as they have everything, because they'll somehow develop that strong work ethic. It doesn't matter whether or not a person has integrity, because they'll develop it. It doesn't matter whether or not someone is just fat for the sake of being fat. They'll fix that. All of these things are taken for granted. They're irrelevancies to communism and those who are communists. Now, the problem with this is, of course, none of that happens. It never has, and it never will. This is the sort of problem that every communist country that has ever existed has run into. It turns out that farming is hard, and that people do it either to take care of themselves or to make money. Or, for example, building a car is difficult, and so whatever it is that makes it easier, this is how they always end up having to assign jobs, because they need the material absolutism. It must be that material equality is established. And this is also why it doesn't matter if everyone is rich or everyone is poor. It only matters that the material equality exists, because that is the moral absolutism. That is the moral line which must be met, and then everything will supposedly take care of itself. Now, clearly, any even brief looking over of history tells you that that doesn't happen. This is where the authoritarianism comes in. This is why it's acceptable to force people into labor camps or to create certain numbers of nails per day. None of that matters. It doesn't matter what the rest of their life looks like, as long as they are materially equal, even if that means they're starving. It doesn't matter if I have to send men with guns literally to tell you, go to work. Because clearly, none of this matters. The only thing that matters is the material equality, because that makes us morally equal. This is also why they hate the rich, because the rich are materially unequal to the poor. Every single underpinning of communism relies on materialism as moral absolutism. Working backwards from there, that's what socialism is trying to do. Squish the material inequality until it's closer together. This is why you find Bernie Sanders complaining about wealth inequality and how immoral billionaires are, simply because they're billionaires. This is why you find AOC saying that it is immoral to be a billionaire, because the material inequality is the immoral act. It doesn't matter what else is going on. It's also why they don't care about degeneracy, however you define that word. And the only thing they find degenerate is material inequality. This is the only thing that matters. All other considerations are irrelevant. Moving backwards from your socialists to, and in this case, your social democrats, and why I have so often drawn a straight line between all of them, to those people who decide that, well, maybe we should have a little bit of inequality, but not a lot. And these are the people you find who say, but I like free markets, and of course there's going to be inequality. They have some consideration of what it is that could be important to life. Often you find them remembering from usually generations gone past, well, there is a work ethic, and that is important. They have some other consideration, but they have adopted this idea that in some cases, material equality, materialism as a moral absolute, must be integrated. And that is how they decide that things like universal health care are a great idea, because that material equality, doesn't matter if it's good or bad, the material equality is what matters. You hear this in arguments with people defending socialized medicine. Well, even if it's not as good as it is for everybody else, well, at least everybody's got it. Why is that good? What 14th century care for everyone is worse than 20th century care for the majority. I mean, it seems self-evidently so, but so many things must be ignored because they hold on to a little bit of that which makes communism correct. Materialism as moral absolutism. This is the thing that they need to hold on to for this to be true. And this is why you find centrists and that sort of thing just keep doing it. They incorporate this idea as though it is relevant. It isn't. And it never has been. This is the same thing you find with, if it will save even one life. Some things are more important than life. I forget who, but someone, I think Governor Abbott, just got crucified for saying that out loud. This is a founding premise of the United States. Give me liberty or give me death. The material equality is irrelevant. Living some horrible, disgusting, pathetic life is worse than dying. That is the idea. The idea that is seemingly every day lost more and more. We are not very interested in living lives where you may not have become a billionaire, but every day you did something that mattered. If to no one else, to you. You went out, as Academic Agent has recently been making videos about, and delivered milk because you were a milkman in the 50s. And you could go home satisfied that you did something and that it was good and that you were happy with it. This is a non-material consideration. It does not exist to the communist or to the leftist in general. And the leftists that we all too often find a little less crazy than, Bernie Sanders, are ones that say, well, it is important that he did that, but what's really important is that everybody got milk. What is it that they're still saying? Materialism as moral absolutism. Don't get me wrong, there needs to be materialistic considerations. Not eating will produce death. Okay, there should be food. However, these are not the things that make for a great life. Don't believe me? Look at welfare. Every single day, the material equality of this minimum standard of living, and that phrase unto itself, minimum standard of living, moral absolutism. Materialism as moral absolutism. This minimum standard of living, it must be met. Why? What is the benefit? Well, let's not even discuss it. Because materialism is moral absolutism. Everything else is a secondary consideration. And if you think anything else, you are the enemy to these people. Any time someone brings up work ethic, life satisfaction in some fashion that is not material equality, what happens? Every time you're some pejorative, or that will obviously be taken care of, and why are you bothering to ask? These are the only two answers, though they get phrased in thousands of ways. Every single answer comes back to that. In a more modern sense, one that you saw just the other day, well, if we give everyone on unemployment $600, their work ethic will just bring them back to work. What's actually happening? Not that. The simple reality is, if the only consideration is material equality, then who cares if I'm working? I have money. That's what matters. And this is an infection in modern day society that is destroying everything. Again, material things should not be entirely discounted. But when materialism is moral absolutism, we are lost.